Here I go again on my own. Oh, bitch. Oh yes, your classic little bucker. Little buckers are all over the place, and they can be dangerous if you don't know how to ride them. The reason being is little buckers aren't intuitive on how you should ride them. So what classifies as a little bucker? Well, let's take a look. A little bucker is typically a rock that does not have a flat top, a flat platform that you can ride up on, a bike length or more, and gain stability and ride it like a drop. Little buckers most of the time have like a inconsistent transition onto it. It can be steep and it could be gradual like we see here. Little buckers can, such as in this case, look like a jump. Jumping these might not be the most efficient way to handle them. Now this particular one here, if we ride it like a jump, it's going to put us into rocks, an incredibly chunky section that's loose, and we risk pinch flats and just a general loss of control, or perhaps a loss in speed if you're trying to race the line. Little buckers can be thought of as Earth's punch from below. If you come into this with speed and you ride it wrong, it will punch you from below and it's going to do bad things to your body. So some little buckers you can roll if you really slow down and roll at a snail's pace. Generally, you can't roll them at trail speed. Now this little bucker here, if you get lucky, you might be able to roll it. Let's see. No chance. So little buckers are all a little bit different, but they're all the same. So what's the best way to ride little buckers, and can you apply that theory to all little buckers? Well, let's take a look. But first, let's look at how you don't want to ride a little bucker. Now, what a lot of riders' go-to motion is in such a scenario is they will get down and they will push the bike forward to clear that bike of the obstacle. Now, if you are unprepared for Mother Nature's punch from below, you're going to push back and you're going to do the old butt cheek brake check, or the old dark side friction slide, the old rear wheel deep feel, the old rectum ride, the old sphincter tinker, the old too far back bloody crack. Now listen, I did not get my 2025 How to Mountain Bike manual yet, so I'm sure there are other terms I'm missing. If I missed any terms, put them in the comments below. Let's take a look, let's see what we can do, let's explore, let's experiment, and see how we want to ride this thingy. All right, so I'm gonna ride this little bucker like I just came upon it for the first time, and I commit to going off of it. And I'm torn between the idea if it's a drop or if it's a roll or if it's a jump. So I'm gonna keep that mindset. I'm gonna do my best to hold that mindset, and I'm gonna ride it how I would. Oh.
All right, let's take a look at what's going on here. So this one here, I kind of just rode through and plopped off of it. I did what I needed to do so that I would not get bucked and that, I would avoid a dead sailor. So I came in here, stayed forward on the bike, chin relatively over the stem, knees over the toes. And then all of these awkward undulations, these little bumps and stuff, and awkward physics in this, awkward shape. If we look at this, you can tell I felt every single bump, holding strong legs the whole way up the transition and kind of just riding off of it with as much balance and control as possible to avoid a dead sailor. So I didn't really control the arc. I didn't control the feature with my body. It didn't feel efficient. It didn't feel smooth, and it didn't feel in control. And I can tell you, after this plop of a landing, I didn't feel like I had total control to ride out of this.
Now I'm going to ride it like a jump, or at least try to ride off of it like a jump.
So a characteristic of most little buckers is that you don't want to jump them. This one here I mentioned in the earlier in the video that has a very flat, kind of rough landing. So what I do in this example is I come off with strong legs and I let that transition, the wedge of the little bucker, push into my strong legs and transition into my body mass, which I kind of lead into my arc. Now I don't pop the lip, because if I pop the lip, it's gonna even make this landing even more brutal, because like I said, it's flat and it's full of roots. So I do a bare minimum jump here, sends me, kind of deep. And you can see how that landing is just really brutal, even on a long travel enduro bike. And, we can't assume that everybody's riding enduro bikes and on trails like this. So had it been a cross-country bike, it probably would have been a worse impact.
Now I'm going to ride this little bucker how I think it should be ridden.
So I'm going to show an example of how you would ride a little bucker in what I believe is the proper way. And essentially what that is we're going to absorb the awkwardness of the feature. We're not going to allow its sharp knuckle or its awkward, inconsistent transition to impact our flight or the physics of our movement in a negative way, put us in a bad position where our body may be off balance, our bike may be off balance, etc. So to do that, we need to nullify all of those awkward elements of the feature. And to do so, we're going to absorb it. So to do that, you really need to be focused on your positioning on the bike. So you want to be high and forward on the bike. Most beginner riders, when they ride new features or awkward features or scary features, they're low because they feel like they need to be in the attack position. When in reality, being low in the bike gives you very little ability to let the bike absorb into you. So what happens is these awkward features, they push it into your bike, and because your body mass is so low and connected to the bike's mass, those features push into you and they translate right into your body, which sends your trajectory off in an awkward and unbalanced way. So you don't want to be low. You also don't want to think about pushing backward either. If you're low and you push backward, you are, really creating the perfect recipe to get bucked. So as I approach this, I'm higher on the bike and I'm forward. There comes a point here where you need to recognize the last percentage of the feature that you want to absorb. It'll be different for every feature. On this feature, we'll say it's the last 20%, but bigger features, that might not be possible. It might be the last 5%. But we need to have a visual idea of how much of this we want to absorb. And for me, I really want to absorb this bit here because this is where the knuckle is going to apply those awkward forces on our bike and on our body. So because I'm high, what I do is there'll become that point where I commit to absorbing those forces. And I really don't want to continue with strong legs and let that feature, the wedge, the little bucker, continue to press into me to carry me upward. I want to do the opposite. I want to absorb. I want to nullify that force. And to do so, I disallow my body to continue rising by letting my shoulders absorb the whole front end of my bike and my knees come up to absorb the back end of my bike, okay? I want you to notice one thing here. While it looks like I might be backwards on the bike, there's a big difference between pushing the bike forward, okay, and letting the bike come up into you. When you let the bike come up into you, yeah, your hips will be back, but you've not pushed the bike forward. My center of mass is still very much centralized on the bike in this position. So I let that bike come up into me and I think of it as a rowing motion. And here's where I row out because of that force of that bike coming up into me. I just let it row out of me because it keeps my body mass in a controlled trajectory. And in this instance, I'm trying to control my body mass to come back down to the ground as soon as possible. Essentially, if you vision this as a jump, you would have a big arc here. When we absorb the jump, when we squash it, and in this case, it's a little bucker, when we absorb a little bucker and we squash that last awkward bit of it, we really want to plateau our arc and then, control our body mass so it comes back to the ground in a controlled, quick manner. And so I've let the bike row out in front of me. And then I've begun to row it back into me for the landing. And what that does is then it re-centralizes my body mass over the bottom bracket. Now you can see I nose into the landing here. I'm a big proponent of nosing into the landing because when your front wheel lands first, it does two things. One, it allows you to regain control of your steering right away. Second, it spreads out the impact a little bit over a little bit longer length of time. If we were to land both wheels at the same time, the impact would be instant. When you land front wheel first and then rear wheel first, it spreads it out and kind of soothes out that impact and makes it kind of less pronounced.
Okay, found another little bucker. So look at this little bucker here. So this one is framed by goalposts. So we have this tree and then we have this tree. So we have to ride it at a certain angle. So we got to ride straight off through here, okay? But what you might not see from this angle that you might see from this angle is there's a knuckle on that. See this knuckle right here? That's a little bucker, okay? How do you ride it? Do you pop that knuckle? Well, let's take a look at the landing. The landing is loose and flat. And then we have this little tree right here. So I'm gonna ride it how I would ride little buckers and see if it works on this one. Little buckers are kind of like that puppy, that mutt that you come across on the street, and it's so ugly, it's cute. And you didn't want nothing to do but to go down and scratch its little head. So you come up to it and you scratch its little head and it bites the out of your finger. I have followed people on rides that have gotten bucked from little buckers. I've followed people on rides that did the old booty break on little buckers. I've ridden with people that got squirrely off little buckers, went straight into the woods. I've ridden with people that slammed on the brakes coming up to little buckers, but just a little bit too much momentum carried them over the peak, and they did that forbidden top tube dance. This little bucker. So it inclines here, okay? And then the bike is still going up this rock, the rear wheel is anyway, when the front wheel is ready to leave the rock. So there is barely a bike length on this rock to prepare what to do to get down there. So do you ride it like a drop? Do you jump it? Yeah, it's a little bucker. You ride it like a little bucker. So think about how you can use your body suspension to suck up those awkward elements, that awkward punch from earth. Know that you have to absorb it in a way that doesn't put your body in a bad position. I do my best to offer content that's informative and entertaining. If this means something to you whatsoever, consider subscribing, consider liking. Leave a comment below. Tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your brother, tell your sister, tell your baby.